Welcome back to Lists 101 with Intelligent Demand. I'm Aaron Owens, the Director of RevOps Strategy here at ID. And in video one, you and I talked about your total addressable market. And we broke that TAM down into a couple of smaller pieces of the pie that are a little bit more useful and meaningful with the work that you and I are doing to build your target account list. And today, we are going to take that work and actually turn it into a broad target account list. So if you haven't watched video one, I encourage you to go do that. Now, your target account list, as a reminder from video one, is the list of companies that your entire go-to-market team is aligned on targeting, meaning that your investments, your focus, your energy is all going after these defined accounts. Now, one thing I want to clarify before we get too deep into this is that not everybody you sell to is going to be on your TAL. Not everybody you sell to should be on your TAL. You should still have very, very active and effective demand gen programs that are going after smaller companies and maybe even large companies that aren't on your TAL. You should have partner motions that are bringing companies in and clients in from your partner channel. So I'm not suggesting that we get rid of any of that. This is simply helping you to define and structure your account-based motions, which is just part of the puzzle. So how do you know if a company should be on your TAL? Well, broadly speaking, these should be companies that are big enough to justify increased investment. Now, your number is going to be unique to you as a company, but I'm going to give you a couple of benchmarks to use to help guide some of this definition. The first benchmark is looking at your first year total contract value. Oftentimes, we use the benchmark number of $50,000 of first year revenue as sort of a benchmark for when a company is worthy of being added to the TAL. Your number might be higher, your number might be lower. The other number we look at is the lifetime value of the customer. The benchmark we use as a starting place is $150,000 lifetime value. Again, your number might be higher, it might be lower. That's totally fine. These are just benchmark numbers, but whatever your number is, it should be a number that represents a big enough revenue potential to justify the increased investment that your account-based strategies are going to require. These companies on your TAL also should be much tighter ICP fits. Now, your ICP is your ideal client profile. These are all the attributes that make up an ideal client, not just somebody who wants to buy from you, but somebody who sticks around, somebody that your customer success team says that they love working with, and it's easy for them to renew and expand that opportunity. The other thing to keep in mind is that your TAL oftentimes has some acquisition targets as well as some expansion and retention targets as well, and that's okay. Today we're going to be thinking really about acquisition, but just know that your TAL could have companies on it that are already clients. You're just working on, you're focusing on them from an expansion perspective or a retention perspective, and that is completely legitimate, and I highly recommend that you think about that when building your TAL. So let's talk about the kinds of approaches that make for a good TAL. The first thing is that you want to be doing some sort of regression analysis. Now, that sounds complex and it sounds fancy, but all it really means is looking at your data of companies that have already bought from you, who already are renewing with you, who already are expanding with you, who you already like working with, and looking for trends across a few dimensions. The first dimension is just firmographic dimensions. Do they happen to all come from a specific industry? Do they all happen to come with a certain number of employees, a certain revenue band? Are they a certain kind of company? Do they tend to be startups, VC funded, unfunded, bootstrapped, enterprise, etc.? What are the firmographic similarities? The next thing we want to look at are technographics. Now, this may not apply to you, But even if you aren't selling technology, it's oftentimes interesting to know what technology your clients are using that is tangential or supplemental to the kind of work that you're doing. So what kinds of technology are they using? What investments are they making? Are they making a lot of investments in customer experience? Are they making a lot of investments in financial management? Those are the kinds of bits of information that are useful to know that they are that they have a specific challenge, that they're investing in solving a specific challenge, etc. The third dimension that isn't talked about very much is something called exographics. Exographics to B2B is what psychographics is to B2C. Now, psychographics are things like, is this person more conservative or more progressive? Do they tend to be more calm or more volatile? All of those things, right? That B2C marketers use for targeting us. Been all over the news. We all know about some of the creepy marketing things that are out there. But exographics tries to do the same thing for B2B companies. It says, is this a company that's investing a lot in customer experience? Is this a company that's experiencing a lot of turnover? Is this a company that is an early adopter of technology? Those are the kinds of attributes that are really useful. That's harder to get just from looking at your Salesforce data, so you probably are going to need some sort of a tool, a third-party data tool to do that analysis. In fact, all of this analysis is easier with different tools that are on the marketplace. But being able to look at as many of these dimensions as possible will help you get a better picture of who's actually buying your stuff and what do they look like. All that's looking at data, and we think that your TAL should be data focused, but there also has to be a qualitative component to your data, meaning that we want to be talking to your account executives, your SDRs, your customer success managers, or whatever the equivalent of those roles are in your organization. And we want to be asking them, what kinds of companies are easy to work with? What kinds of companies do you like working with? That's going to bring a qualitative perspective to this analysis that is really, really relevant. It shouldn't be just all about the data. It should be about the experience. And there are traits and attributes that aren't going to stand out from the data, that when you talk to your team, they are going to stand out. Now, here's the caveat though. One of the biggest challenges that we see when companies put together a TAL is they get very aspirational and ambitious, meaning that everybody has Microsoft, Amazon, Walmart, and Disney on their target account list. I'm not saying that big companies that are very aspirational shouldn't be on your list anywhere, but they should represent a relatively small piece of your list. Your list should really be built around who are the kinds of companies that are realistic for us to be able to do business with. You're probably going to be updating your TAL maybe annually, and not that everybody on your list should be you're not going to sell to everybody on your list in the first year, but everybody on your list should have a reasonable expectation that in the next year or so, you can start a conversation and a relationship that would reasonably lead to an actual closed-won deal. Maybe that is Disney, but maybe there's another smaller company that isn't as fancy of a logo, but would be easier for you to sell. Now, strategic logos are good too. Again, not telling you to not put these on your list, but just be smart about it. The other thing to think about is that your budget per account is probably going to be somewhere between $1,000 and $25,000. I know that's a big range, so stick with me here for a second. Not everybody on your target account list is going to have the same experience or the same level of investment. We're going to be tiering, segmenting, and prioritizing on our next couple of videos, but all of your accounts are going to at least have $1,000 investment, probably higher, probably $2,000 to $5,000 is probably a realistic low end for your investment, and $25,000 or so is probably near the top end of your investment for for certain kinds of accounts. If you don't think an account is worth investing that amount in, they shouldn't be on your TAL. So this helps prevent TALs that have several thousand companies on them. Your TAL probably should be somewhere in the 100 to 1,000 company range, 100 to 1,000 account range. And not all those companies are going to be targeted in the same way. We'll talk about that next. But that is kind of a good ballpark. That means that your budget is probably going to be somewhere at least $100,000, but probably between $100,000 and $2.5 million for those accounts. So if that's shocking, then that's a good indication that you need to dial down the size of your TAL or target bigger opportunities. So we've talked about your total addressable market. We've broken that all the way down to how to start to build your target account list. And next, on the next video, we're going to take that target account list and we're going to break it apart into tiers that indicate what your budget investment should actually be for each of those accounts. And we're going to break it into segmentations that indicate how you should approach and group these accounts for personalized experiences. So I'll see you on the next video. Thank you so much.